At any rate, let's get to it. So, the subject of this particular video is going to be about news media, papers, news networks, that sort of thing. Specifically about how much stock you can and should place in those sources. So, before we can begin, we have to understand what exactly media is. In its simplest form, a medium is a method or way that can be used to communicate. Media is just the plural form of that word, or how we refer to all mediums in general. So, television, the web, newspaper, books, and movies are all media. For now, let's just look at news media, the stuff we rely on to let us know what's happening in the world. It is virtually impossible to create anything in media that isn't biased in some way, even if you try really hard. And by bias, I mean experiences in life that might color the way you write or report on facts. I'll give you an example. Say somebody wishes to write a paper on slavery, and that person just so happens to be the Grand Master of the Ku Klux Klan. Well, obviously, he's going to have a very biased view on slavery, and he might not be exactly the type of source you want to trust to give you information on slavery. And that's basically what bias is. In the news, there are 6 different types of bias. The first is called bias through selection. Remember that scandal with Brian Williams, the anchor at NBC? Did you ever notice that NBC didn't spend much time on reporting that scandal, did they? Well, that's because before anything, papers are already selecting which stories to air depending on how it helps or hurts them. Then second is bias through placement. Everybody who reads a newspaper knows the most interesting stories on the front page. So basically, since nobody reads a newspaper, nobody knows that. But anyway, how can editors decide which story is important for everybody? Simple. They choose the ones that sell most. Not the most important, just the ones that are most important for them, aka the ones that sell. The third type of bias is called bias by headline. The only purpose of the headline is to make you read the story. Like this one. A positive story, but it's the writers who decide it's positive. Others with different biases might call it negative. The fourth is bias by photography. A picture says 1,000 words, so a bad picture of something like, say, a political candidate might reveal a political bias on the part of the news organization. Like this one. Yeah, not a big fan of this guy, are they? The next bias is called bias by title or name. This one is simple. In America, Osama bin Laden was given the title of terrorist. But in certain places in Afghanistan, he is given the title rebel or even freedom fighter. It was the same story for George Washington, only the roles are reversed. He was the terrorist in England, but here he was a rebel. I'm not trying to compare Osama to Washington, I'm just trying to show how titles can show signs of bias in a reporter or network. And finally, we have bias by words. It's like the last one. Instead of using the word invasion in a story, one might use instead the word liberation. Same meaning, but one has a negative connotation, while the latter has a positive one. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Well, hopefully. If you guys don't want to, whatever. I'm cool. Merry Christmas.